Our club's always been a forum for visionaries, public figures, and decision makers to command attention to the issues of our time and inform the most relevant, compelling, and challenging conversations. Here we offer first-person access to dynamic political, business, and public personality.
The Canadian Club is one of the most important podiums anywhere in the world that a Canadian can speak to, tell Canadians what it is that they think, develop those thoughts. And so I want to thank you for that very, very much.
Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists today.
Through our programs and events, including our youth and young leaders programs, our diversity partnerships, our joint events, and our media and social media opportunities, we offer you access to dynamic political, social, and business figures from abroad and right here at home.
The platform from which the eloquence of Canada has flowed all of that time, whether it be business, education, politics, sports, arts, and culture. If someone wants to say something to Canadians about this country and about the future of this country, this is the venue you choose.
Good afternoon. My name is Glenn Parkinson, President of Canadian Club Toronto and your host for today. And welcome to those of you joining us online at canadianclub.org. Whether you're joining us online or in person, our events rely on the generous support of our sponsors. And we'd like to welcome back Canadian Bankers Association as our season sponsor and Air Canada as our official airline sponsor. So thank you for your generous support. Canadian Club Toronto regularly invites leaders from the region to join us for our events, and today we've got a young leadership table from Toronto Metropolitan University joining us. And finally, in the spirit of partnership and support, we're pleased to share that a portion of ticket proceeds today will go to United 24, the official fundraising platform of Ukraine. Now, before I introduce our guests, I want to remind you that our events here at Canadian Club Toronto involve you as the audience. So if you'd like to submit a question during the event, there are question cards on the table. And for those of you online, there's a button on the right-hand side that says Submit Question. So feel free to click there, and our team here will receive the questions either online or come around and grab them from the table and bring them to the panelists. And now I'm pleased to introduce our panelists, beginning with Her Excellency Yuliya Kovaliv, Ukraine's ambassador to Canada. Yuliya Kovaliv was appointed Ukraine's ambassador in 2022. Prior to joining the embassy, Ambassador Kovaliv was deputy head of the Office of the President of Ukraine. She oversaw economic policy development and international financial institutions coordination. She also served as the deputy chair of the supervisory board of the national state-owned oil and gas company Naftogaz Ukraine. Valeriy Kutsyy, CEO of Miratech Group. Miratech is a global IT services company that brings together innovators from the corporate world as well as startups and drives digital transformation for some of the world's largest institutions. Valeriy joined Miratech 25 years ago as a software engineer and became CEO in 2008. And it's our honor to welcome from Kiev, Ruslan Kostetsky, Deputy Chair, Ukrainian Association of Fintech and Innovation Companies. Ruslan leads the international cooperation stream at UAFIC and is driving the promotion of Ukraine Fintech, along with B2B integration of startups. Before joining UAFIC, he was country manager at SAS Institute in Ukraine. And moderating today's discussion is Andrew Graham, a very good friend of the Canadian Club and former president. Andrew's co-founder and CEO of Borrowell, one of Canada's largest fintechs. And also in 2004, when working in government, he was the head of communications for Canada's 500-strong mission to oversee elections in Ukraine. So, with that, Andrew and panelists, the Canadian Club podium is yours. Yep, 2 sets of stairs, so it's the choice is yours.
Ambassador, you're going to speak at the podium.
Good afternoon to everybody. It's a big pleasure and honor to be here today with you and with the excellent team of Canadian Club Toronto. Thank you for having this discussion today. Thank you for the invitation. And thank you on behalf of all the panelists for the ability to speak after lunch. Because with the choice of waiting for lunch or a bit of sleep after the lunch, probably that is a better option to you. But I will try to be quick and not as boring to make you sleeping after this lunch. We are today talking about the resilience and the technology. And we know, all of us, how technology is already modifying the way we live our life, the way we do business, the way the countries cooperate, and the way the world is living now. During COVID time, it was technology who helped us all to stay together, to be able to work together, to be able, the families, to connect. And technology is also important now for Ukraine as Ukraine is fighting the war. I will talk today a lot on the panel about the strengths of Ukrainian technology. But to begin with, I would like to say that it's a totally different war than the conventional war many of you saw in the books as a Second World War. It's both the war of the tanks, it's both the war of artillery, it's both the war of the missiles flying throughout our country, but it's also the war that brings technology on the important stage. Both the drones, the UAVs, and geolocation, and the other technologies that we and the people and the soldiers use is an important part for our ability to first withstand and also to move forward on the battlefield. And it's also important for you to understand that who are those people who are fighting now on the battlefield in Ukraine? Who are those soldiers, men and women? And many of them are former your colleagues. A lot of them went from the business sector, a lot of them were lawyers, some of them were journalists, many of them were IT people who voluntarily within the first days when Russia started its illegal invasion, who voluntarily stood the lines and conscripted to the army. And they brought a lot to the army. They brought the business perspective of efficiency, they brought with them the technology, they brought with them innovation and agility. Agility to survive, to adapt, to find the new ways on how to go further. So this is a big part of what helps Ukraine to move further on the battlefield, and we are moving as a counteroffensive goes. And the other thing of the technology was actually helping the country to manage to go through this 18 months of the war. You can imagine 4 a.m. in the morning, alarms and missiles are flying all over the country. And the biggest fight for many people at that time was that the mobile connection could fall down. And nobody will know what's happening, how to get contacted with the relatives, friends. There was no single minute that the mobile connection was not working. And I'm pleased to say that one of the managers of the big telecom cooperator who was helping to make it possible is today with us. I would like to make applause to her and a lot of mobile operators who made this possible. It was really heroic. And then the government, which need to work and make important decisions as the war starts. And because Ukraine has built strong digital governance, the strong processes that allow people to work remotely, digitally, making decisions, circulating the documents quickly, the government was able to work efficiently with different locations, from different locations, with people flying from the surroundings of Kyiv occupied, but there was none of the day that all the government agencies has stopped to work because of technology. And the third thing about Ukrainians. We have 7 million of IDPs, the people who lost, a lot of them lost their homes, lost their documents, lost their beloved ones, and they moved to other places of the country. There are 6 million of people who flew to Europe, to Canada, to North America, to find a safer place during the war. And many of them were not able to get a traditional way of the government services, which they need. And that's very basic, from the passport to the banking card, to the other birth certificates of children, and many other things you usually do in a normal life. And that's because of the technology and the digital governance and the digital services that Ukraine built. All of them can get them online from every part of the world, and it's working. And I would say what I usually show the government application, what we Ukrainians have to get the digital services, starting from the digital passport, digital driving license. I can sign my agreement putting a digital signature online in my iPhone. So as an ordinary Ukrainian, I can travel throughout the country, get all of the services I need as a citizen, having only my iPhone, or not an iPhone, smartphone, proper to say. And it helped a lot the country to get as many processes closer to normality. Because otherwise, if we will be, the country stick to the paper, stick to all of the paper processes, you can imagine the people fleeing the war under the stress. Many of them lost their beloved ones. None of them will ever write a long email or stand in the lines to get the services. And we need to value this strong technology that Ukraine developed. And we are sharing the stories just to you to understand how much technology helps us in the situation where we cannot live the normal life. But what is the backbone of this technology? The backbone of this technology is the strong leadership of our technology lead in the government, and also a robust Ukrainian talent to build in this technology. Ukraine has built, even before the war, the strong governance and the strong leadership in the government to promote technology and to promote IT sector. We have a special vice prime minister who is 31 years old, who've done almost all of the things in terms of the digital government. I think he's a genius, to be frank. And he is driving the whole government to move digitally as quick as possible. And I think we are now one of the best in Europe in terms of digital technology. But also, besides the leadership, we have over 350,000 people working now in Ukrainian IT industry. And now each year, we will educate 50,000 more students who will graduate from IT, AI, and the other digital technology from Ukrainian universities. And the government is putting a lot of efforts to help. But it's not only the government. We need to have, and we have a strong industry who supports us, who support the private sector, and who is also, as Miratech Group, here working outside Ukraine for many companies abroad with their solutions. So the IT sector in Ukraine in 2022, imagine the wartime, recordly exported $7.3 billion, which is 18.2 times more than more than 10 years ago. And it's now 45% of all export of services Ukraine is providing. And it's account almost 5% of the GDP of the country. It's a huge for us, and it's well known in the world. We have over 2,300 companies, IT companies, technology companies in Ukraine. As I mentioned, around 360,000 IT people working in the industry, and around 72% of companies are not only services, but they are the product companies as well. We put a lot of efforts, as I mentioned, in the education, building the strong backbone for the industry to grow. But there is one more thing which makes Ukraine IT sector very competitive. That is the taxation. I would say it's hard to imagine, but we created a special tax regime, which is called the DSCD, for the IT companies who will register under this regime. The overall tax for the salary for the IT specialist will be around 10%, no matter how much they earn. If you put it on the global map, if you take into the comparison, it's very favorable. And the third important thing is about the resilience. And I think today Miratech will tell how the IT companies are working during the wartime, during the time when there are the attacks on the critical infrastructure, when there is no electricity. But from many clients who are working with Ukrainian companies, what I'm hearing and my colleagues are hearing, none of them ever delayed any deadline. None of them ever broke the contract. People sitting in the metro stations, people sitting in the basements, continue to work to make your companies and to make your services stronger and better. And this is about the resilience. This is the resilience of the core Ukrainian people who are both fighting using the technology and fighting for technology to go to the global market. And as Ukrainian ambassador, I would ask you to partner more not only because you love Ukraine and you support Ukraine, but also because it's really strongest thriving technology sector that makes a lot of life of people, your clients, your products easier, better, and I do believe and I hope that this kind of events and the more we will make this year with the IT industry here in Canada, you will get more to know and you will be excited how many unicorns, I'm not here to advertise the companies, but how many unicorns have their origins from Ukraine, have their teams in Ukraine, and how many products you use basically are Ukraine made. Thank you.
Well, Ambassador, thank you for that. That was a terrific start to our conversation. And just before we get into some of the discussion, I think it's important to acknowledge something, which is that at the Canadian Club, we routinely host CEOs, we routinely host senior diplomats, we routinely host people that represent industries. But there's nothing routine about this situation. We have a country that's been invaded, a country that's at war, and looking out on this audience, many people with backgrounds like ours who are working in finance or IT or many other sectors 2 years ago find themselves on the front line of a conflict today, of an armed conflict. And I just wanted to start off the conversation by saying how I, and I'm sure I speak for hopefully all of us in this room, just want to acknowledge the bravery and the resilience of both the government and companies, and indeed the people of Ukraine over the last period, and it truly is remarkable. So just to get into this, first of all, Ruslan, can you hear us? Can you hear us, Ruslan?
Yes, Andrew, I'm here.
Perfect. That's great. We're so glad you're here with us. Can you just tell us a little bit about where you are today and what life is like on the ground in Ukraine?
Thank you, Andrea, for intro. Thank you, colleagues, for invitation to take part in this event. Thank you, Ambassador Kovaliv, Mr. Kutsyy, for being on the same chair today with you. And Ukraine right now, we have evening, we have dark, but no alarm from missiles. We have quiet in Kyiv. And from the point of view of Fintech, I represent Ukrainian Fintech Association, the business, the companies in IT, in Fintech, and everything what is going in online and makes money in online. We call it Fintech, EduTech, whatever, MedTech. The sector is recovering. Sector is trying to come to normal business, to try to find some opportunities abroad, to find partners, to find some opportunity to save stuff and make business supported by any opportunities from international cooperation, from new networking in Ukraine. A lot of foreign companies, representatives, foundations are coming to Ukraine to support Ukraine and to give us new opportunities. And this situation is influencing all other steps we are trying to do, like we call it Stand with Ukraine. And as we can see at Ukrainian Fintech is about 250 companies. And if we see at IT sector is about 5,000 companies. And when the war started, it's evident that small part of Fintech couldn't make a great job, but thanks to the big companies like Miratech and other companies, it was time to make the process efficient. What Ambassador said, that companies could go to cloud, militaries could try to find new solutions for actions in Ukraine in the front line. A lot of people were relocated to Western Ukraine, and a lot of people were relocated even abroad. Because women could go there. And due to big and systematic IT business, the contracts proceed going on. Money were trying to be kept within companies. People had jobs. And beside the business stop, like credits, online credits, a lot of services in online, they were put on hold. But due to the international business, which companies tried to do before the war, we got sustainable and efficient process in IT, in Fintech, and right now we try to recover this. It's like situation.
Well, I can, we often say that it can be challenging running a technology company, a fintech company in Canada. I can only imagine what it's like for your members. And thank you very much for that sort of macro overview of what it's been like in the sector. Alexei, maybe I can turn to you. What's it been like running a company where I believe about a third of your employees are in Ukraine, and I know some of them were working from subway stations and other locations like that. And maybe just before you answer that, you can give folks in the audience a better understanding of Miratech. Maybe there are future customers in the room. So maybe give the brief overview of Miratech and what has it been like to run a company where so many of your employees are in Ukraine?
Thank you, Andrew. I almost like to start with answer to your question and reflection to what you said, that it's difficult to run business in Ukraine, yep. Much more difficult than fintech company, much more difficult to run in Ukraine than in Canada. That's what you said, but I almost disagree, saying that if you have great people, it's easy to run business. And we have great people, and that makes work of every CEO very easy. Talented people, hardworking people, well-educated people. They may work overtime if it's necessary. It's really, I would never say that it was difficult to run business, even in a wartime, and maybe I can give some more examples. Coming back to your question about Miratech, we are the oldest company in Ukraine, and we are not the biggest, but we are the oldest. Not the biggest, as history was dramatic, and the company was established by scientists, and scientists had scientific visions, they had no marketing vision, so that's, we were a little bit back and forth, and at some point Miratech was a part of public group, Scandinavian, we were selling business to Scandinavian large conglomerate called Telenor, And in 2007, then we were buying it back in 11. So it was always a little bit back and forth. And I would say, in a certain way, dramatic history, which is good for us because you can prepare it to all kind of anomalies, including war. From territory and client perspective, we are currently operating in 25 countries. That's where we employ our people in 25 countries. And our biggest markets are United States, and Canada is emerging for us. We are just started 1 year ago our small baby subsidiary here in July last year. We opened our branch here in Canada. First 20 plus people working here. Some of them are our best members of team here, including Amanda. Thank you for bringing me here, by the way. I would not sit here without your energy. And working for multinational corporations primarily. We are a company with a small number of clients. We are integrator, very active in customer experience space. As a service integrator, all kind of chatbot technologies, call center technologies, that's where we are, and working for primarily multinational corporations, Fortune 1000, but not limited to. And I missed it, there was another question.
Yeah, Valeriy, what's it like for your employees, and what's it like running a company where you have so many employees in a war zone?
Yeah, we are a company with history, 33 years old, so we can see how things are developing, and we had some sort of DNA which helped us to come really prepared. And that's true story that when war started, there were no milestones missed or projects failed. Partially in our case, not just because people were, I would say, relentless, maybe. This is the right word to say that, but also partially to the fact that we were able to do some redundancy with employees who were outside of Ukraine. That war which we see now, it's basically, it didn't start in 2022. It started in 2014. And that was a time when to me at least, it was obvious that that's a beginning, that's not the end, and we will see phase 2 and maybe more. And in 2014, we were still a 100% Ukraine-based company. We had only one employee working outside of Ukraine in Washington, D.C., our first American colleague. And at that time, when we see this first invasion, which at that point in time there was no, it was not officially, right? So it was some just people volunteering, just green men. You know?
Right, the invasion of Crimea.
In Crimea, and also it was east of Ukraine, Donetsk and Lugansk. And at that time, we saw that basically things started happening, and we over all these 8 years until the start of the war, we organically, without much of M&A activity, there was basically no M&A activity. We step by step, we were investing into diversification, building our presence outside of Ukraine, and we've done basically everything to be 100% prepared. So it may be hard to believe, but what I'm saying here. But when war started, I didn't spend more than 1 hour on Miratech business when war started. It was 60 minutes a day was enough for me to keep Miratech business up and running, and I was spending the balance of my time just through all my networks and channel, just to knock all the doors and help Ukraine in multiple ways, including all these embargoes and sanctions, and knocking every company I could reach so they stopped doing business in Russia. So I was focused on these areas, so that we were very well prepared when this thing started. And partially one thing which was working very well for us is that we adopted 2 years ago, 2 years before war started, almost like 2 years before war started, work from anywhere policy, so that our people were not really coming to the office already for 2 years. All our units and projects and service units, they got used to this remote environment, working from home, working from from anywhere, working from vacation, if you have traveling and partially vacation, partially working time, so that people were educated how to work in this environment. And when in Ukraine infrastructure was sort of collapsed, for first 2 weeks were very, very difficult, and you cannot go to office. Offices were obviously closed and so on. People were already trained how to work in this environment, and it was just sort of normal for them. Obviously, there were interruptions. Obviously, some people were not available. Obviously, some people were not working, but then we were able to, we had some redundancy in people who were staying in Poland and in India, whenever they were able to provide a backup. So that's why it was really very easy for us to keep business running, and we're very grateful to all of our clients. We didn't have any single client who left, who reduced business or who stopped business and so on. So it was really 8 years of preparation, and we saw these things are coming. That partially for this reason, it was maybe easier for us, a little easier than for other people. But I saw other companies were resilient, and I saw that we were very successful also handling this drama.
Well, I can only imagine how hard it must be to build a company while preparing or being prepared for a second invasion, which it sounds like is exactly what you and your team have been doing. So that's very admirable. Given the resilience and the courage that we've been hearing about, Ruslan and Valeriy, Ambassador, maybe I can turn to you. Canada obviously has done quite a bit to support Ukraine, but so have many other countries, and there's obviously great need. How do you see Canada's response? Have we done enough? Or how do we compare to other countries?
Thank you, and of course, Canada and Ukraine have special relations, and they have been built with a lot of people ties. For over 130 years, when first Ukrainians moved to Canada and especially that started in the prairies. But on the personal level, I would say there is no single day in Canada I'm not meeting the person either from Ukraine or with Ukrainian roots, or having traveled to Ukraine, or having Ukrainian friends. And I think that also helped more understanding what is on stake. And we are really grateful how Canada quickly, with no doubt, stood with Ukraine, was the really strong and powerful, not only the diplomatic, not only the political message, but the real steps of support, including the decision to send weapons. This is something what I think for many countries before the full-scale invasion, they were not sending for us. The weapons, the aggressive invasion, what we saw altogether, it was late night, as I understand, on the February 23rd here in Ottawa. It was early morning in Kyiv. And that is helping us to fight for our country, but also for the rule-based order. Because what we need to all to understand that it's not only Ukraine fighting for our borders and our people who are living under the occupation. It's also we are fighting to live in the world where rules are respected, borders of the countries are respected, and diplomacy, not a military power, is prevailing in how we deal with the things where we have different views. Because otherwise, it's not only the other countries from different regions is watching, but it's also the ways how the world will be shaped in the decades ahead. And that's a big stake. And I think, and I'm really grateful for a lot of understanding of this and standing strong with us. And we are really grateful for the robust financial support. And we are able today to talk about the technology, resilience. But we need also to understand that last year, economy of Ukraine shrank 30%. 30%. And imagine, plus the government have huge spendings to support military. And Canada is among the top leaders to provide the financial support to Ukraine. And that helps Ukrainian government to support teachers, doctors, pensioners, internally displaced people, those who are most vulnerable and who are continued to work inside the country. And that is very valuable because it helps the country and the people to live through these hard times. And of course, the sanction pressure. I know that here there are a lot of people from the private sector. And for many Canadian companies who made their decision to left Russian market, we say huge thank you. It's really important to know that the sanctions also are working and that Russia making such an illegal invasion and committing these all war crimes, it's not only risky to do business with them, but it's also something that they need to feel that there is a huge price for that crimes that they committed. But still, to be frank, and as we have today a discussion around the technology, unfortunately still Russia has access to many of the technologies. And unfortunately still it has an impact on their ability to continue their military production. Although it was reported that they become very creative to import washing machines to get some chips, because no other way was possible. But still, in reality, they still have the ability and they still have the access of technology. And that is not only for the governments to make their decision on the sanctions list, but I think it's also for the business, for the private sector to make a right choice and to stop not only like the actions of the companies, but also encourage the others and all of the supply chain not to work with Russia. And here Canada is one of the leaders on this sanction file, on helping us to build the legal cases to bring Russia to justice. But the war goes on, and Ukrainian soldiers are moving in a counteroffensive. For you to imagine, there are the areas where each and every square meter has been mined. So if you just make a step 1 meter right or left, you can be killed by the mine. And that is where Ukraine is cleaning that to go further into the counteroffensive. But we need to win this war, and we need your support, and we need the stable support for us to be able. We have, you see Ukrainians, both us here, both Ukrainians connecting, relying, like 40 million country is resistant, 40 million country is courage, and the people want to fight back and bring them back their land, our people back from the occupation. The only thing we need is your support, helping us to do it. Because we learned the stories of appeasement of Putin. We went through it in 2014-15. We ended up in the full-scale war that already hurt global food prices, global energy prices, global supply chain, climate. So these are the things where the impact of Russian full-scale invasion have more than Ukrainian borders or the Europe.
Thank you. Those are great points to remind us all of. Ruslan, if I can turn back to you, given that you're in the country. Summer's over. We've got a counteroffensive. You've got a counteroffensive, of course, that's going on and may have a limited number of weeks to go before winter. What is the mood amongst your members and amongst your friends and neighbors as we go into a second winter at war?
Thank you, Andrew. It's like I can say it has two parts of answer. The first one, that my friends and startups are buying actively power banks.
Like backup power supplies, is that right?
Yeah, to have it at home, at office, whatever, in the car, because you can stay without electricity. And we had this situation last winter, and it was sometimes dramatically when you have some online workshop or event like today and everything turns off. So we want to escape the situation this year, but from the practical side of this question, the first of all is the desire of companies and startups, fintechs, IT companies, small teams to recover their business activities. And they come to us as association, as fintech association, for some assistance and their voice to the market, to international partners we are cooperating with, because we are trying to cooperate with international fintech associations in different countries, also in Canada, to find some opportunities how we can scale networking, how we can find new opportunities for our members. And in this search, we tried to communicate with different organizations like International Financial Corporation, European Commission, and finally with the European Commission, we agreed to get funds and grant to develop for Ukrainian companies so-called matching platform for IT, for fintech companies who are suffering from lack of contracts right now and the decrease in the money they can pay to their staff. And we are trying to develop right now the project, we call it Fintech and Innovations SME Open API platform for business sustainability in Ukraine. And it has two very important words in the naming, like matching and API. And I would like to say that what the ambassador said, we are very active in digital, like government, like society, and also like business. And the government program is that in 2025, in the middle of the year, the open API, open banking legislation will go into force. And a lot of international companies, a lot of startups, local, will get new opportunities for so-called API economy. And I suppose that big integration companies, big international companies, startups will get new opportunities in Ukraine. And we welcome any company, any business, any financial business which could like to make business in Ukraine. We have 42 million people, and it's a great market. So after the war, everyone is welcome, even during the war, because the earlier we start, the earlier we will get some result. And the mood of the business of fintechs, of companies, we are talking to banks and financial companies which are working in online, is saying that they're recovering the market up to 40–50% right now, but it's not the rate which was before the war. And also companies are coming to us and asking, Ruslan, what we will do after the war or even next year. And the question is in the new behavior of the online market. We are getting new segments of people we need to work with. It's veterans, it's people who suffered from the war, and we need to understand how online, how digital business will help them, help to recover, help to return to Ukraine, their families, make safer education process to students and children. Because up to now, my nephew who entered university 3 years ago, he was no day in university for education process, because the whole education process for these 3 years was online, and he lacked this networking with other students, with some emotions, etc., etc. It's very difficult situation for students, for schools right now, but we are trying to make this digital infrastructure. Fortunately, nobody can hit digital infrastructure, online services. And if we need a lot of time to recover physical infrastructure, like electricity, some constructions, online is very quick for reconstruction. And we welcome everyone who would like to come to Ukraine for digital reconstruction, for recovery. And the Fintech Association is ready to host on the ground such opportunities.
Well, that's a terrific offer, Ruslan, and I'm glad that you've sort of teed us up for talking about what happens after the war. And by the way, if I understood properly, It sounds like Ukraine is moving forward on open banking at a much faster rate than Canada, which should be a big source of shame for those of us here involved in that effort. But that's great to hear that Ukraine at least is moving forward. Maybe I can turn, and I know we have to unfortunately wrap things up. Maybe I can go quickly, Valeriy and Ambassador, if you could talk just briefly about what you're each looking forward to, whether personally or professionally, once the war is over. Ambassador, why don't we start with you? What are you looking forward to? What are you excited about doing, both professionally or personally, perhaps, once the war is over, which we all hope will happen soon?
So after the victory, you mean?
Pardon?
After the victory, you mean?
After the victory, exactly.
That will be a big thing where we will not only talk about the rebuilding. So that's about the building a new country. I mean, for us, rebuilding of Ukraine post-war is building better. Now is the time for preparation. So for many companies I'm meeting here in Canada, and I'm hearing that a lot of them still are reluctant to take a war risk, which we work on the other side for insurance to provide. But even with that, what I encourage too is to start exploring and looking and getting more information about Ukraine, whether it's their digital sector, whether it's IT, whether it's infrastructure, energy, agri-sector. So after the victory, you will be prepared to go on the ground and explore. This will be more than $400 billion of the investment of the country, which is already a candidate to EU member and on an expedite path to full EU membership, future NATO member, on a path to that. So, and the big support of the international community was the rebuilding file. So that will be really the big thing to do. In terms of the technology, Ruslan told about the new legislation. I would say that Ukraine is also the country who already adopted the legislation, for example, of virtual assets, which is for a lot of companies who are working in that sector. It's really one of the pioneers in the world. And in terms of the Fintech, there is also the small story I just want to share with you. When you were talking, and thank you for also donating to United 24, that is the platform. I think never done it before, when the government and president as the supporter and the leader for the fundraising. United 24 is the official government of Ukraine program, where you donate officially to the accounts of the National Bank of Ukraine, but also within the first days of the war, it was cryptocurrency. And Ukraine was accepting it. Ukraine has the legislation for the cryptocurrency, and even a lot of donations from the IT sector within the first months of the war. We are talking about tens of millions of dollars were coming in cryptocurrency. That's the new world. That's the new technology and regulation in the financial sector. And the war pushed us to be more digital, to be more innovative, to be closer to the clients, and the clients are the people of Ukraine, whatever services we are providing them, either the government or the private sector. And that is a big drive for us to become more efficient, as the war puts a lot of challenges behind us.
Okay, well, that's a terrific vision for after the victory, as you say. I know we're almost out of time, but I want you to take us home, Valeriy, here. Talk about what you're excited about for when the war is over.
I'll try to be short. After the victory, we will celebrate. Maybe for a couple of weeks. And then we will have more work after the victory. We will have to focus how to make Kyiv, if I can say this, great again. As it was 500 years ago, Kyiv needs to be a regional capital, so that all processes and all capital and business and talent and all great people need to be around Kiev. Moscow is just a mistake, just a historical mistake. We need to correct it. We need to make sure that these things will never repeat. We will not see this again. And that's a lot of work, as you can imagine.
Now I'll finish off by having everybody stand for the final. No, I was just kidding. For the final 5 minutes. Ambassador Kovaliv, Ruslan, Valeriy, on behalf of the Canadian Club of Toronto, thank you for an engaging and inspiring discussion. I mean, we all witnessed the devastation being inflicted on Ukraine and are inspired by the resilience. And we admire your leadership and the efforts you're making to support Ukraine in this critical time in its history. And we look forward to having you back and connecting after the victory. I remind you again that you can donate to United 24 using the QR code on your table and online. Andrew, as always, we're grateful to have you as a skilled moderator, and thank you for your support and reflections. Before we close, I'd like to make you aware of 2 upcoming events. On September 19th, Isabelle Hudon, President and CEO of Business Development Bank of Canada, will be our guest. And on September 26th, CEO of Alberta Investment Management Corporation, Evan Siddall, will be with us. Please visit our website for more information. Let me conclude by thanking our AV partner of many years, VVC Live, for so effectively facilitating our gathering today. Members and guests, thank you for being a part of our season opening event, and we hope to see you again soon. Have a great afternoon.